Kill the turkeys, ducks, and chickens, mix the punch, drag out the dickens. Even though the prospect sickens, brother, here we go again.
Ah, the holidays. The snow on the ground, the twinkling lights, the gathering of family and friends, the endless arguments over who did what to whom 15 years ago, the endless traffic, the hassle of buying holiday gifts, the psychological stress of trying to attend every single holiday gathering you're invited to, and of course, for some of us, the knowledge that the industries we work in means we're going to have to go into work that day rather than getting the day off like everybody else.
No Burl Ives, no Bing Crosby, no Herbie the Dentist, no Cindy Lou Who, no Sister Act 2, no Wayne's World 2, no Three Musketeers. Three Musketeers? I hate the Three Musketeers.
Okay. No, I do not like the holidays. As I've mentioned before, my sense of holiday cheer has been slowly but painfully ground out of me for having to work every major holiday for approximately the last 25 years. So I get it. At this time of year, rather than joy and goodwill, you feel nothing but bitterness and spite. Fortunately, if you take the time to look, you can find several movies out there which can prove quite cathartic to the usual Christmas programming and indulge your senses of both bitterness and whimsy.
Now, of course, over the last few years or so, many films have emerged as so-called anti-Christmas classics. Die Hard, Home Alone, The Nightmare Before Christmas, and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation spring immediately to mind. But I would argue that these movies have gone through the anti-Christmas sentiment and come out the other side so that they have, for some people, become traditional holiday viewing and valid Christmas classics. So we're not going to talk about them because everybody does. There have been a ton of articles written over the years about the best anti-Christmas movies, and some of them will probably crop up here, but I'm going to do my best to come up with a few you may not have considered before and will, with luck, help you cope just a little bit better with all the enforced cheer and nonsense this time of year inevitably brings.
Note that this is not a ranked list. We are not doing quantitative analysis here. Okay? I don't need the extra work and the stress, and quite honestly, I'm not interested in showing you the best of anything right now. That said, a good majority of these movies are products of their time and contain elements which can range from eyebrow-raising to anger-inducing, depending on how you feel about the issue. So, in the interest of fairness and to make sure that nobody gets irritated with me, I'm going to put some content warnings before we talk about each film if you'd rather avoid any discussion of that sort of thing at all under any circumstances. This is the risk you take when filmmakers decide to satirize the holiday season. That said, let's get the really problematic shit out of the way first. Mel Gibson is a racist bastard who, by all rights, should never work again. However, if we must acknowledge that Die Hard is now a Christmas movie, then by the same rules, we also have to concede that Lethal Weapon is a Christmas movie. There's holiday decorations all over the place, clips from movies and TV specials, holiday songs, a shootout at a Christmas tree lot, and yes, an acknowledgement of the sad but true fact that the suicide rate tends to go up around the holiday season. Gibson's more Neanderthal ad-libs aside.
Someone was in bed with Amanda Hunsaker the night she died. Right up till now, we assumed it was a man. Okay, suppose it was Dixie. Okay, disgusting, but okay.
Oh, fuck off, Mel. Lethal Weapon, taken as a whole, is actually one of the more solid entries in late 80s action. The Christmas setting doesn't really add anything to the plot, but it serves as an interesting backdrop to several of the set pieces. Now, if you can get past Gibson's involvement, I think you'll find that Lethal Weapon makes a very interesting alternate for those rare occasions when Die Hard isn't available to watch for whatever reason. Kevin Spacey is an abuser and an asshole. Let's make that clear right at the outset. Fortunately, he's not the main star of this particular film. No, that honor goes to Dennis Leary as Gus, a professional thief who, through a series of mishaps, finds himself trapped in the whitest town in Connecticut and is forced to take a bickering couple hostage in order to try to figure out a way to get out of town without getting caught by the police. This is complicated by the fact that the police have set out roadblocks everywhere, and the couple's family is showing up for Christmas Eve. And they all can't stand each other. As Gus finds out really well when he encounters Kevin Spacey's mom, played by Glynis Johns. Yes, the mom from Mary Poppins.
You know, lady, I'd like to tie you to the back of a fucking truck.
You don't have the balls.
I know loan sharks that are more forgiving than you. Your husband ain't dead, lady. He's hiding.
This movie is endlessly quotable, and everyone involved gives great performances to put a nice bitter edge on the saccharine sweetness that tends to permeate most Christmas movies. If you haven't seen it before, give this one a shot whenever your family has finally been too much for you and you wish somebody would come into your house and just tell them all,
Now shut the fuck up.
Terry Gilliam is an old man who is woefully out of touch with the social niceties of the modern era. However, Brazil, his dystopic satire of bureaucracy in modern life, regretfully grows more and more prescient with each passing day. Terrorism, paranoia, police brutality, government bungling, not taking responsibility for your own actions, it's all here. And it takes place at Christmas time, where even the holidays themselves are a twisted mockery. Everyone seems to be giving each other the same boring gift regardless of who they are, and forcibly sticking to a message of peace and goodwill, even as people are hauled off by the government and ground into paste by the gears of societal control. If you're in a blacker than usual mood this holiday season, Brazil should suit you just fine. This 1983 comedy revitalized Dan Aykroyd's career and cemented Eddie Murphy as a rising star. However, it is a 1983 comedy, so yeah, more problematic elements, not the least of which is the director. John Landis, famously at this time, was also under fire for the tragic death of Vic Morrow and two extras during the shooting of his segment of Twilight Zone the movie, which came out 2 weeks after this film did. Also, the N-word gets dropped, but it's sort of justified in that it is being spoken by one of the antagonists and is meant to rouse Eddie Murphy's character's ire. So, eyebrow-raising, but it kind of makes sense in context. Sadly, this also makes sense in context, but it's just for the sake of a bad gag and, yeah, really a red flag there, movie.
Otherwise, yeah, it's a pretty good movie where Aykroyd's snooty upper-crust stockbroker and Murphy's homeless street hustler characters are switched through the efforts of Aykroyd's wealthy bosses as a wager in the study of nature versus nurture. Murphy is catapulted to the lap of luxury, and Aykroyd is disgraced and sent barreling to the bottom. However, when they find out what's been going on, the two join forces, along with a kindly sex worker, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, and Aykroyd's butler, played by Denholm Elliott, to get revenge on Aykroyd's bosses and make themselves a fairly hefty chunk of change at the same time.
Now, this movie isn't strictly a Christmas movie, but it is set over the course of the holiday season, starting somewhere around Thanksgiving and ending just before New Year's. So, it qualifies. Plus, you get to see Aykroyd running around drunk in a filthy Santa suit. This 1994 Steve Martin vehicle wasn't a success at the box office, but for our purposes, it fits. It is a farce revolving around the characters who work at a suicide hotline. Now, naturally, this means that yes, there are some suicide-related jokes, but these are not the main focus of the film. Instead, the film is more focused on the wacky characters who come and go through the call center where the suicide hotline operates. Now, there is one other major problematic element in that this is Liev Schreiber's debut role, and he is playing a transgender woman. However, this is 1994, which means that yes, there are a couple of instances where the character is misgendered by her own family and by Martin's character, as they clearly regard her as a cross-dressing man. Not only that, the term transgender is never used because that term was not in widespread use in 1994. Those elements aside, however, this is a nice little quirky comedy with stellar performances by Martin, Madeline Kahn, Schreiber, Juliette Lewis, and even an early film appearance by Adam Sandler. Give this one a watch if you're looking for something a little lighter in your anti-holiday fare. Because nothing says holiday cheer like hundreds of mean-spirited, sharp-toothed little monsters running amok in small-town America. The juxtaposition of Christmas iconography and PG-rated horror really works well here. There's a ton of laughs and a few genuine scares along the way. This movie's a lot more restrained than its sequel, which works in its favor. Director Joe Dante even manages to curtail his usual turns for the cartoonish. Mostly. It's a solid entry in the anti-Christmas canon, and if you haven't seen it in a while, or haven't seen it at all, give yourself this really unusual present for the holidays. Is there anyone who suffers from holiday stress more than our moms? That's the central thesis of this film, the sequel to 2016's Bad Moms, starring Mila Kunis, Kristen Bell, and Kathryn Hahn.
It's been Agatha all along.
Christine Baranski, Cheryl Hines, and Susan Sarandon are added to the cast as our three leads' own moms with their own issues. Baranski is Kunis's overbearing and domineering mom who has her own ideas about how Christmas is going to be celebrated, running roughshod over Kunis's attempts to have a low-key, mellow Christmas this year. Hines is Belle's overly involved and affectionate mom who seems terrified to let her daughter live her own life, even making a cash offer to buy the house next door at one point. And we see that Hahn's character's maternal issues seem to stem from the fact that her mom, played by Sarandon, was notoriously absent, only showing up from time to borrow money.
This is a funny, outrageous movie that doesn't quite reach the heights or depths of its predecessor, but if your holiday ailment is stress from trying to have the perfect Christmas, especially when your family can't even seem to agree on what that is, well, then this is probably the balm for you. Trapped in Paradise is the story of the Firpo brothers, Bill, Dave, and Alvin, played by Nicolas Cage, John Lovitz, and Dana Carvey, respectively. The boys apparently have a criminal past which Bill is trying to leave behind, but is immediately complicated by the fact that both Dave and Alvin are released from prison early and into his custody. Dave is a pathological liar and Alvin is a kleptomaniac, and they immediately get him into trouble when Alvin decides to raid the till at a local corner market that they stop at on their way home from the prison.
Ultimately, the three wind up in the small town of Paradise, Pennsylvania, thanks to Dave's insistence on checking the place out after hearing about it in prison. And with good reason. Security at the local bank is a joke, and Bill decides to go along with his brothers to rob the place, getting away with $275,000 in cash. But getting out of town proves to be harder than it seems. First they get lost, then they crash the car, the weather turns bad, and the FBI shows up to investigate the robbery, shutting down the roads out of town, and the interstates are shut down due to weather. Nearly every attempt they make to get out of town is foiled by one circumstance or another, and as Christmas Eve wears on, things only escalate as the mobster that Dave got the tip about the bank from was planning on hitting it himself, and promptly breaks out of prison and kidnaps their mother to force them to turn over the money. And to complicate matters, the boys find themselves getting to know the people of Paradise and find that they're actually very nice, pleasant people, and get confronted with the repercussions of what will happen to the town because of the robbery. It's a comedy of errors with three funny leads. Lovitz and Carvey are at the top of their game with the comedy that made them famous, while Cage matches their energy by giving him one of his signature over-the-top, extremely strange performances that has since been termed as going full Cage.
The movie does contain the use of the R word as pertains to a supporting character in the story. However, again, this was 1994, and the word hadn't been widely recognized as a slur yet. That said, Trapped in Paradise may in fact be the least problematic film on this list. It didn't do well at the box office, but if you find yourself in the mood for a little holiday mayhem and you're sick of Home Alone, this one could probably fill that void quite nicely. And there you have it, several suggestions for movies that are decidedly lacking in cloying holiday cheer and saccharine sweetness that have also not been played to death on TV over the last few years. If you find the need to have a palate cleanser to wash the taste of tinsel out of your mouth, give one of these movies a shot, and who knows, you just might find the holidays a little easier to deal with afterwards.
Yes, tell your friend the Easter Bunny he can expect a call from me too. What are you looking at?
So let the raucous sleigh bells jingle, hail our dear old friend Kris Kringle, driving his reindeer across the sky. Don't stand underneath when they fly by.